Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Well, a mostly sideways week this week with Binance Coin being one of the best performers. I'm giving you my update a little bit earlier than normal because it's a big day today in the Nugget household with Gemma having her baby shower and I'm off to have whatever the male equivalent of that is. But before we get into it, big shout out to everyone that's been supporting the channel and a reminder that we do put every video out as a podcast. We reached 100,000 downloads this week. So Ben does a great job converting them all to podcasts, and I know a lot of you love listening in that format as well. And also, I guess this is a bit of a proud dad moment before I officially become a dad soon, but getting messages like this, someone that lost a lot of money in 2018 and giving us, so much thanks for our group and what we do. And it's really been our mission this year or last year during that brutal bear market to deliver a lot of value and create a, accepting community where everyone's helping each other. Whether you're learning, making money or both, there's plenty to be doing even in a bear market or, this sideways market if we do stay in this. So on this day in crypto history, last year was that big fall off after Bitcoin had hit its 20k mark, wiping off $300 billion in just a couple of days. Back in 2017, those Chinese exchanges that were renamed after this, but halted margin trading, and it really was the Wild West with some of those Chinese exchanges offering 100x leverage back in the day. One of Bitcoin's lead devs, Mike Hearn, said he's no longer working on it, and Bitcoin was an inescapable failure. That was really big news back in 2016. A lot of people thought he knew something that other people didn't, that Bitcoin was going to die. But as we know, the honey badger continues on its way. And in 2015, Bitcoin traded as low as even $110 on Coinbase in the 2015 bear market. And I guess we could expect a similar thing when we talk about that price action. If we have a big wick down and a final capitulation, it doesn't stay there for very long, and not many people actually get to get a feel at those prices. And I think often people think that everyone got to buy Bitcoin at that price. It's certainly not the case. And 5 years ago, since Dash was born, so happy birthday to Dash, a project that continued to strive for real world use in different countries, and they've got some great upgrades coming this year as well. In light of these on this day in crypto history, well, we've seen this 10-year challenge floating around on social media, and I know it's a bit of fun. I'm certainly not against it at all, but I said, can you really say that you're a happier, better person and making the world a better place? And I guess that's the way to look at it as well. But I was a bit sus about this whole thing, and then later comes out this week some reports that maybe it is helping their algorithm with facial recognition and aging and so on. So look, I'm not sure if you want to put your tinfoil hat on and read into this too much, but nothing would really surprise me with Facebook and the other social media agencies they own. Into the real estate news now. So we have been covering this a lot lately, and we did our January update with Martin North, but this is one of the charts that he shared recently, and this is the number of loans that were getting rejected. And we know the banks were told to, hey, start lending more, you're being too tight, you're not lending enough, and that has fallen dramatically. So they are starting to lend out more, particularly to investors. So it's going to be interesting to see if that's a theme or a bit of a one-off, or if there was just less loans over that Christmas period getting rejected, but certainly something to keep an eye on. One of the largest data breaches in history, over 770 million email addresses and 21 million passwords. So we know that centralized databases put a target on their back, and I think security and that distributed ledger is something that a lot of people are going to have to start to look at and say, hey, is there better options? Because people are starting to become aware of the fact that their data isn't private, and they want to keep it in their own custody, or a lot safer at least. So we've been talking a lot about demographic trends and where the economy's going. I did my video about if we're heading into a financial crisis, but this was a great article on Zero Hedge about the breakdown in births and people of childbearing age and populations, and that demographic cliff that we've fallen off, where for the first time in history, there's less people having babies. There's a growing aging population. So this was a fantastic article talking about what countries are going to be affected and when. And we should expect all this to slow the economy. Speaking of slowing the economy, this was a great article again by Zero Hedge showing which of the world's largest economies are going to continue to grow and be dominant by 2030, which is only 10 years away now. We know China and India are really going to step up as big players here, and China have already overtaken the US, but it's pretty scary to think how big India could become with their populations, and some of these other countries, which a lot of people wouldn't consider powerful right now, that are going to continue to grow and be very influential on the world. And depending on where you're located, this is all going to play into geopolitics, the war narrative, the money narrative, reserve currency. So really interesting article. The world's economy is reaching its growth limits. So just like we're having that demographic change, I've spoken about exponential growth. We have finite number of resources, but we're always striving for growth on this planet. This was a good article talking about how you can actually get lower oil prices even as we reach the limits of growth. So it's often these second order effects, which are really interesting to explore rather than just a lot of the assumptions that, hey, when we run out of oil, prices will really spike. But it's all those second order effects that can actually lead to lower oil prices. So I love reading these sort of articles. Now, while the economy's slowing down, while stocks are turning down, here we are again with banks, the big 5 US banks, all announcing record profits, bonuses out there. A lot of shareholders, are maybe the ones that are copying it a little bit more. So is this the peak of those earnings as interest rates continue to rise in the future? We've had this low rate environment where banks' margins are increasing, they're making more money. But is this the end? Is it all downhill from here if interest rates start to rise and the banks' profits are going to get squeezed? Finally, we covered this one a little bit last week, but they're saying now up to 1 million people are expected to descend on the streets of France. So we've seen these, one or two sort of examples of ATMs not giving out the cash, those banks being closed and so on. So this is really interesting. Keep a close eye on this. I just get a feeling that something big is going to come out of this, or it's going to set an example for other countries. On to the crypto news now, guys. So time and time again, we see people trying to get rich quick. And I did a video this week for members talking about having realistic expectations. And a lot of people now are getting a bit worried about things I've invested in. And we often forget that, hey, these are only 6 months, 12 months into these startups. And some of the biggest coins out there, the largest market cap coins, still haven't developed good wallets or hardware wallets. And those companies raised $1 billion. And yet here we are, very critical of these very small companies that only raised a few $1 million and only have very small staff. They're making good progress, I'm sure, but it's just a little bit unrealistic that we get these startups some money and we expect them to be going 10x or 100x 12 months later, because that wasn't the reality. That was just the ICO boom. Now we have to be patient, as with all startups, and have realistic expectations. Binance have launched Binance Jersey in Europe. So some people are saying to me, what's the point of this Binance account versus the Jersey account? Well, if you're in Europe, this could bridge that gap so you can put in pounds or euros. So I've got a link in the description below, guys, if you are interested in that account, as Binance march on with their mission to, give people an on-ramp in every country. And I'm sure they're going to be coming to Australia at some point. We see record volumes on these Latin American markets. I've spoken about this before with localbitcoins.com. Look at the countries that are continually growing that aren't really affected by the price of Bitcoin. They're going to be using this no matter what. And this is a trend we're going to see continue. And countries like Thailand planning to get on board with this token trading, build their own platforms. So the longer the US hold off, the better chance it gives these other countries to say, hey, come here, we'll do it. We want to capture that market share if the others are going to be slow to move. Now, in Australia, we had our board meeting this week for Blockchain Australia. Very keen to get in and grow the community from the grassroots level and interface with government on that high level as well. So we're keen to drive that in Australia. Ask what you can do for the community, guys. And it was great to see Austin and Nathan, friends of the channel, launch that Advanced Diploma of Applied Blockchain. Now, that's going to be very popular. We're going to have, check out the interview if you haven't already, but we do have a discount. If anyone's interested in doing this course, check out that video. there's a link in the description, and when you put down your name, just enter Nuggets News, and that will give you quite a substantial discount if you want to do that diploma. One of the big coins in the news this week was Grim. Now, we've spoken about Mimblewimble and privacy on the channel a number of times, and this was one that I did speak about in terms of the way it launched, been very similar to Zcash. So, there's no pre-mine, so the only way you can either get this is buy it or mine it, and we often see this big rush for people that want to buy it on day one, but then it does tend to crash pretty hard. So it's going to be interesting to see where this price levels out. Grim and Beam are certainly neck and neck going for that privacy angle, talking about Mimblewimble, but I'm keeping a close eye on this technology to see how it can be applied to Bitcoin in the future, as well as others like Dandelion. There's been some great articles out about this week as well. Now, I did post for members this week about Veil, which is the first application or layer built on top of Olga using 0x and on top of Ethereum to take these prediction markets mainstream, and Olga is actually up over 100% since I posted this in the next 24 to 48 hours. So head over and check out Veil if you haven't already. But it's really just trying to get this friendly interface for people to take bets on. They've got a lot of markets at the moment for the Academy Awards, but this is what we need. I've spoken before about Olga being a really clunky background. Once we have these popular, easy-to-use front-end markets, I think people are really going to get used to this just as we sit on our phones, and a lot of people have their betting accounts that they love. So Circle's stablecoin underwent another audit this week. So this is putting pressure on Tether and others to be really transparent. They have captured their way up the charts in terms of market share, but I still think that Olga, it's always transparent. It's always on the blockchain. We know it's over collateralized. This was a fantastic article about a gentleman who had a lot of ETH and didn't want to sell it, and he still had his mortgage, so instead he took out a loan. Now, I've done a tutorial on how to take out a loan, and he paid down his mortgage and credit card debt. So, instead of paying over 13%, we know that we can take out a collateralized loan on Maker for 0.5%. So I know it's an absolute no-brainer, guys. If you can afford to do this and you're sitting on a lot of ETH, don't pay that banked out interest rate. Take out this decentralized loan. This is the perfect system that Maker have built. I love what they're doing. It's going to be one of the top projects for 2019. The other news this week was that Ethereum hard fork been delayed at the very last minute. So vulnerability in one of the EIPs. Look, it's crazy to see that something as big as Ethereum can still have bugs, and it shows you how early on we are in the technology, how we are experimenting. That has been delayed, expected to kick off now on the 27th of February, which is in line with that ETF date and a lot of key dates that Bakkt is still talking about. Summer sometime here in Australia. So I think there's going to be a lot happening in the coming weeks. Some great news from CoinGate this week, and I've spoken about Litecoin being this test net. So I think it's going to continue to have a role. A lot of people think that being a test net gives it no value. I actually think that it is always going to have some value. If the Bitcoin network gets congested in the future, or while we're still experimenting with Lightning, I think Litecoin are going to implement some of the new features on their Lightning network. So it's all great for the ecosystem, the silver to Bitcoin's gold, as I call it. However, Bitcoin's Lightning Network itself is making great progress. A lot of you guys have used Wallet of Satoshi now. They ticked over 10,000 Lightning payments in just a week or two since we covered that. If you have used that, you'll notice that you have to use these invoices instead of typing addresses or whatnot. But some great work being done here with this Sphinx upgrade, being able to send Lightning transactions without those invoices. So again, it's just getting easier and easier in the future. The technology is gradually there. It's just a matter of getting that adoption out and user-friendly apps, education, all those things that we focus on. BitPay processed over 1 billion in crypto payments. So this is already happening without the Lightning Network, people using this in the real world. Personally, particularly with Bitcoin at these lower prices, I'm not a huge fan of spending your Bitcoin if you don't have to. I think Bitcoin's main use case at the moment is that store of value for those lower prices. If you believe in Bitcoin long term, I don't necessarily think you should be spending a lot of money on buying yourself dinner rather than holding on to that Bitcoin, because I think it's going to be worth a lot more in the future. But let me know your thoughts on the comments below. Depends on what country you're in, whether you're using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange versus that store of value aspect. It was back in December when I put out this tweet about Russia being sanctioned and increasing the odds that they adopt cryptocurrency. So a lot of these stories are a little bit, far-fetched. I actually don't think that there's enough evidence to suggest that Russia are going to invest in Bitcoin. If they did, I think they'd be keeping it pretty quiet to accumulate and fill their bags rather than letting the world know and causing a speculative rush. But I think at some stage in the future, there is going to be a turn to whether Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies by these countries that get sanctioned. We've already seen the Petro come out and do it, but it only takes one other big country to get that ball rolling. In terms of our altcoin news, Matt has been doing a fantastic job, guys. I cover what I think are the most important articles, but if you head over to Nuggets News, we have the daily 10, smaller 10 articles, a lot of altcoin articles that you might have missed. So do set nuggetsnews.com.au as one of your pages to visit every day. Finally, I did my top 10 projects. I gave you some STOs that I'm watching closely, some older projects that I really like, some themes that I think are going to play out, and one of those is money flowing into these larger cap coins through investment products. And we saw that this week again with Grayscale Investments adding a stellar investment product. So I think that money's going to flow into that high cap coins, index products and all that. But check out that video if you want the full information. Cryptopia was hacked this week. This is a really interesting theme that I think could go in either direction. Whether or not people are going to try and go down the custody route and not educate people about how to install a wallet and store your private keys safely. And if we're just going to see that Grayscale investment, other investment products, Coinbase custody, all these big funds that are getting into that side of things, because people are just so fearful of those other exchanges being hacked and learning how to do it all themselves, getting insurance for these custody. Now, I know that gets against the crypto narrative of holding your own keys, all that sort of thing, but I still think there's some percentage of people that no matter what, they're not going to learn how to install a hardware wallet and store it themselves. So those custody solutions, that is the answer for them. Along these lines, we see Swiss multi-billion-dollar bank Rontobel launching their regulated crypto custody. So I've just spoken about that. There's going to be a lot of fight. We've seen it all year to lay out the foundations and the infrastructure for capturing market share of who's going to offer all these custody solutions. And we know Swiss has traditionally been a safe haven for financial assets. Now, Bitcoin's price volatility is down at 98% year on year. That's pretty crazy to think about. Daily volatility stood at $61. Now, remember the days when Bitcoin was going up $100 or $1,000 a day? We're now down to $61. So I'll head over to the price action now. Last week, we were expecting this bounce on January 14th, and again, we got it perfectly. These cycle brackets have done a great job to help us lately. The bounce wasn't overly convincing. Decreasing volume, we've run into these moving averages and we're rolling over. So look, if we head out to the weekly chart here, guys, I'll get that back on auto for you. I just want to bring up the 200-week moving average. And you can see this really clearly. We've had a bounce. Again, not overly convincing. And then we had that reasonable sized dump. So this is a really important candle. We know that we're running into resistance on the daily though. So look, I actually think the market looks fairly weak at the moment. We've got our cycle brackets ending over here on the 31st of January. So the bullish scenario is whether or not we can continue higher for a bit more of the length of this bracket, some good news, a bit of a catalyst. But otherwise, if we roll over early, the weakness could continue into the end of January. So I've got my short on. I'm trading this in Litecoin, where I did lay into that short in the $38 range there that I spoke about last week. I'm happy to remain hedged. Litecoin has also hit these resistances and rejected. So it's going to be this candle closing in half an hour that's going to give us a fair idea whether we can continue lower. Let me know what you guys are trading. Are you making some money? Are you learning? Head over to nuggetsnews.com.au if you want to join our community. But thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm going to go and enjoy my baby shower. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.